guys, it's Bree. Just in case you don't know me, tonight we are going to read a story and it's called Lolo T and the Horse Soldiers. I may have said that wrong, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. 2 days passed and Pansy was still thinking about the story Papa had told her of her great-grandmother Nancy. As Pansy walked along beside the moving wagon, Star stayed close by her side. Somehow, Star always knew when Pansy was troubled or worried. In those times, he would stay close to her side, wagging his stubby black tail like a whip. And looking up at her from time to time, Pansy looked down at Star. She seemed to know he was worried about her. "It's okay, boy," said Pansy. "I'm just thinking about things." She picked up a fallen stick, which had broken off a sycamore tree hanging over the road. "Get it, boy," said Pansy, and then sent the stick sailing past the team of horses. Star scrambled to the stick moments after it landed. Pansy yelled, "Papa," from the wagon seat, "you are going to scare the horse by throwing sticks in front of them." Pansy knew he was right. "Sorry, Papa," Pansy responded. Meanwhile, Star came running back with the stick in his mouth, ready for another round. Pansy was just about to throw the stick again, only this time in another direction, when Mama's voice spoke up from the back of the wagon. "Pansy," Mama called, "who were you talking to a minute ago?" "Oh," Pansy smiled, "I was just talking to Star." "I see," said Mama. "Do you talk to Star often?" Mama asked with a chuckle in her voice. "Only when I feel kind of bad." Pansy replied, "Why do you feel bad?" Mama asked. Pansy began telling Mama how she keeps thinking about what it must have been like to be captured by Indians and kept from a family for so long. "It was a good thing Lolotia was there to take care for my great-great-grandmother, or she might have not survived," said Pansy in a happier tone. "Grandmother, or she might have..." Oh, sorry, I read the wrong line. "Okay, that's almost for certain," said Mama, as she climbed down out of the wagon and began to walk beside Pansy. In fact, Lolotia saved Nancy's life twice. "Really?" questioned Pansy. "Did she have to run the gauntlet again?" "Oh no," said Mama. "After she ran the gauntlet once, she was considered a princess and was respected by the tribe. Although they wouldn't let her go home, they took special care of her. They gave her food, water, and made sure she was protected. In winter, she was given a warm blanket to sleep under, and she was always given plenty to eat." Mama continued. For a short time, things were all right for Nancy. But then one day, the horse soldiers came to the camp. "Who are they?" asked Pansy. "Well, in those days, the army had horse soldiers. They are soldiers who were trained to ride and fight from their horses. Their horses. These soldiers were looking for the Indians that had been killing settlers and burning their houses to the ground. The tribe of Indians where great-great-grandmother Nancy lived learned that the soldiers were nearby. So they moved all the women and children into a secret canyon up in the hills to protect them." Of course, Lolotia and Nancy went into hiding along with the rest of the tribe. And this is a picture of Lolotia. I don't know if you can see that, but... "Well," Mama went on, "a horse soldier accidentally discovered where the Indian women and children were hidden. The captain of the horse soldier was a man by the name of Cook." "Really?" asked Pansy. "Yes," Mama replied. "Captain Cook, just like the famous English novel captain who had traveled around the world, but this captain was not a very good man. He was mean and hated Indians." "Well, what happened?" wondered Pansy. Mama explained the story when Captain Cook found that she was defenseless women and children hidden in the canyon. He told his men to ride into the camp and start slashing them with their swords. Many of the horse soldiers following Captain Cook knew that this was not right. for armed soldiers to hurt or kill innocent women and children. When they rode into the camp, they swung their swords, yelling and hollering, but they were intentionally missing the Indian women and children, allowing them to run away into the forest. They refused to dishonor themselves by hurting innocent people. Captain Cook, on the other hand, was a bloodthirsty fighter and wanted to cause pain and suffering, especially to the Indians. He rode into the camp, yelling at the top of his lungs and wildly swinging his sword. He saw an old woman and a young girl hiding behind a tree. It was Lilitia and her great-great-grandmother, Nancy Ross. Of course, Nancy looked and was dressed just like the other Indian children. When Lilitia saw the captain coming after them, she grabbed Nancy and they ran. Remember, Pansy, we told you that Nancy had black hair, dark skin, and she looked much like an Indian, Mama asked. Yes, said Pansy, I remember. Of course, they were no match for the speed of Captain Cook's horse, and he quickly had them pinned against another tree. As he lifted his sword, Lilitia instinctively grabbed Nancy and covered her head with her hands to protect her. The captain's mighty sword came down right on top of Lilitia's hands and Nancy's head. The sword sliced through some of Lilitia's fingers and gashed a gap on the top of Nancy's skull. The wound was bad, but that would heal. The captain laughed and rode off, cursing and chasing another Indian woman, while Nancy and Lilitia stood in shock at what had just happened. This old woman's first concern was not the loss of her fingers. In fact, 5 years later, or not 5 years, in fact, years later, Nancy would tell her family that she would never saw Lilitia cry or express pain over what happened. She immediately began to pour water on Nancy's head, and she found a cloth to cover Nancy's wounded scalp. It was only after she was sure Nancy would be okay, she began to tend to her own injuries. Lilitia was a wonderful woman, said Pansy. You're right, Pansy. We all learn from this story that there are good and bad people of all races and colors. There were bad Indians that killed and burned homes of innocent white people, but there were also bad soldiers like Captain Cook who also attacked innocent Indian women and children. On the other hand, there were beautiful and gracious Indians like Lilitia who protected and loved Nancy. But there were honorable and brave horse soldiers who refused to follow the angry captain's order to kill people. In other words, Pansy, there are good and bad people everywhere of all different races and beliefs. Mama, that is a wonderful story, Pansy said. Oh, Pansy, that's not the end of the story. It's not? Pansy asked. Mama began the story again. No. Many years later, after your great-great-grandmother was returned to her family, had married and was now a beautiful young woman, she and her husband were invited to a very elegant dinner with many important people. Everyone was dressed in fancy clothes. It was a very special affair. As the guests arrived at the party, there was a servant by the door who would loudly announce the name of each guest, welcoming them to the gathering. Nancy and her husband were visiting with the other friends when all at once she heard the name being announced. Please welcome the Honorable Captain Cook. She turned to see the face of the man who had cut Lilitia's fingers off and deeply scarred her own head. Nancy wanted to be polite and at first said nothing to anyone. But the captain was a preposterous, loud, and boastful man. She could hear his booming voice bragging to some of the other men about the great battles he had fought. In the course of his bragging, he began to talk about the time he and his horses had attacked a village of Indian women and children. He was laughing as he talked about cutting the fingers of an old Indian woman and the head of her dirty little child. At that time, at that, your beautiful great-grandmother Nancy stepped into the circle of man, looked straight into the captain's eyes and said, to show him, as she lowered her head and parted her hair, "Do you see that scar on my head, honorable captain?" The captain was startled and said, "Nothing." Nancy lifted her head, looked straight into his eyes, and said, "Captain, I was the dirty little child you cut with your sword. That horrible old Indian woman, as you called her, sacrificed her fingers to save my life. She is my hero, and you may be a captain, but you are anything but honorable." Silence filled the room. The captain was very pale and never said a word, but turned and quickly left the party in shame. Mama continued, "Of course, everyone at the party knew the story of her great-grandmother captured by the Indians, but now they understood and respected her even more as they realized not only had she been captured and tortured by the Indians, but also by this captain as well. They respected her for standing up to him and defending Wolotia. Pansy thought for a moment and then said, "Mama, great-grandmother Nancy Ross was a strong and special person." Mama smiled at Pansy and said, "The strength came from trusting God in the trials she went through. The Bible calls people like your grandmother overcomers. These are special people who have learned to trust God in every situation. Pansy, that said strength is in you. You just look for it and use it. The same God was in her life is also in yours right now. In time, you can be a woman of God just like your great-grandmother Pansy." Pansy had to think about it. The end.